Good morning, everybody. We'll call to order the monthly meeting of the Traverse Bay Area Intermediate School District Board of Education. Dr. Segler, could you take the roll, please?
Brown.
Here.
McKellar.
Here.
Carpenter.
Here.
Shear.
Here.
Hank.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
All present.
Thank you.
Bergie's here.
Please,
Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm sorry, Bergie.
love Zoom. All right, let's join together with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of
the
the
United
United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item D, I need a an approval of the August 11, 2020 agenda as presented.
I'd make the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second. I'll support.
Very well. We have a motion support. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same. All right. Welcome to anyone that is visiting us on Zoom today. Thank you for your participation. This is the time for public comment. Is there anyone in the waiting room, Heather or Renee, that would like to address the board this morning?
Yes, we have Jody Rose, who is here, and she would like to make public comment. If she wants to unmute herself, she'll be all set.
Oh, hi.
Good morning. Good morning, Jody. Can you hear us?
Good morning. I can. Good morning. I only have a couple minutes, right?
Three.
I wasn't expecting to do this immediately, but I have my document up right here with a little bit of highlights. I sent in a card yesterday. Basically I am just going to skim over what I sent in because it was a little bit long. So here's what I have. After speaking with many colleagues and parents, administrators, and being active in part of the roadmap plan to start school this fall, I've come to the conclusion that it just does not make clear sense to start face-to-face instruction for our students this fall of 2020. How can we as role models and professional adults decide to meet daily for meetings and such while not meeting face-to-face because of the risks still involved? But it's going to be fine to have our students, their families, friends, and teachers be put at a high health risk by meeting face-to-face. I know that a lot of the downstate schools, they have made that decision to set a different date to open face-to-face. There's just a lot of unknowns here. But just having that decision made was a lot of stress and anxiety relieved for a lot of people because they now know what they have to do. I know there's a lot of unknowns, we all do. We were focusing a lot on these phases 4 and 5. I feel like we need to shift our focus to phases 1 through 3 because most likely we'll have to go to that at some point. Let's see here. So basically, given that, it just makes perfect sense to focus on a comprehensive instructional platform for online learning that our teachers can use, then adjust for their personal teaching styles. We will certainly be in a huge world of hurt if we do not get an online platform in place soon. All instructors, students, parents, and myself all want to see and need the return to school, but at what cost? How many sick students or teachers will it take to shut down the school again? And those parameters, those plans are being put in place, I'm sure, at this moment. But I know we don't have all the answers. I realize that if we can do this as safe as possible and get a handle on it now, we would be good for next year. It makes perfect sense to start school this fall with online instruction. We cannot and we should not rush something that is not in the best interest of all people just because we want to get back to some sort of normal, especially when we have viable alternatives. We are better than that as educators. I want to thank you, and very respectfully, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for taking time out to address us. I appreciate it. Renee?
Next up would be Carrie Noga.
Good morning, Carrie Noga. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
You have the floor for 3 minutes. Welcome to the Intermediate School Board of Education meeting.
Thanks. Thanks for taking the time for public comment. I emailed all of you last week, August 6th, and I'm simply tuning in right now to reiterate the same message that I sent then. I am the parent of a student enrolled in the autism program that is housed at East Middle School within TCAPS. First, I want to, again, as I did my email, thank and commend the ISD for the enrichment program that has been successfully offered 2 days a week in person since July 20th. I followed a lot of the chatter on social media locally about should we or shouldn't we open up? What can we do face-to-face? And I'm thinking to myself, the ISD has done this so quietly and competently, as I said, since July 20th. So to me, that's evidence that it can be done. And specifically today, what I'd like to add, it's part of question, part of comment. Since my son is housed in a TCAPS building, and they have now decided not to start face-to-face instruction until at least September 21st, what happens to him and his class? And I hope that he can go back face-to-face on September 8th. The small size of the special education classes, the importance of routine to a special education population, particularly the autism population, to me really outweighs or counters COVID as a risk. As I said, you've been doing it since July 20th. I really hope you can. Even between that program is scheduled to end August 20th, so there'd be a 2-week gap. If he doesn't start again until September 21st, that's a month. This fits and starts stuff is not good for education. So in sum, thank you for having offered that in the summer enrichment program. Please keep doing it and work with your partners. I know there's probably other buildings and maybe in other districts. Work with your partners to allow TBA programs in other buildings to start on schedule September 8th, face-to-face, to the greatest extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you stick around for most of the meeting, we may have an answer to your question as we move on through our agenda this morning. But again, thank you for your participation this morning. Renee?
We have one more. It's Tom Mayer. And I apologize, I don't see his name on the screen. He might be calling in if he could unmute as well.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for taking time out to visit with us this morning. Go ahead, sir. You have the floor.
Well, I'm particularly interested in your meeting this morning because you've got back to school on your agenda. I've been to your meetings before as I go to the TCAPS meetings. You may know me already. I'm a former county commissioner. I was county commissioner in 17 and 18, and including the area where the ISD is housed. This year, I decided not to run for local office. Instead, I'm on the statewide ballot for Department of Education, State of Michigan, their Board of Education. And that'll be a plus for our community to have somebody from this area running. So last night I made the same announcement at the TCAPS meeting during public comment. I'm very concerned with all the different ideas that I hear when I talk to my neighbors and my friends and my family, that there doesn't seem to be one type of group that agrees entirely on what to do as far as bringing children back to school. But I tell you, I'm completely behind what you do at the ISD. I support you and what this board does. I know Jason Tank, he's one of my neighbors. But it's a difficult decision you have to make, and I'm looking forward to hearing what your solution is at the meeting today. And I just wanted to let you know that that I will be on the ballot, and that I'm just looking basically sort of like a one topic candidate at this point. How to go back to school? That's a very complicated situation, and how to keep it going again once you do go back to the classroom. It seems like when the TCAPs took a survey, that they ended up with a lot of different conclusions as well. You know, some parents want the kids back in the classroom, and other parents don't mind if some parents' kids go back to the classroom. But in the case of their kids, they want to be online. So I think with the services and the type of education that you offer through the ISD, that Carrie Noga, you know, some of what she just said, I'm very, very interested in hearing those types of comments from a parent that that knows the public schools and the ISD both. But I just wish you the best of luck, and I'll be continuing my campaign, and I will be formulating opinions that I'll provide to the press as a way to get elected. That's probably how my campaign is going to run. Mostly, it's not going to be a moneyed campaign. People that know me actually know that I challenge high dollar amounts in local office runs, or even statewide runs for that matter, that we try to control our spending, and that I will be doing that for sure. So when I got elected to the county board, I only spent $1,000 just to prove that that money is not the answer. But I look forward to your support as a local candidate, and I hope to be able to help you once elected with things that you might need in Lansing as well. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your service as a county commissioner, and best of luck in your campaign.
Right,
Renee,
thank
anything
you.
else? You're welcome, sir.
Okay, no, we don't have any others that filled out a comment card, but if those are online that want to provide public comment, we'll wait a few seconds.
All right, let's move on to action items. Roman numeral 2, recommendation to approve the consent grouping as presented. Need a motion.
A motion.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'll support.
Thank you. Was that Nikki or Liz?
Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. All right, we have a motion to support. Do we have discussion? Go ahead, Dr. Siglerick.
Brown,
Yes.
McKellar, Berge,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. Item B, recommendation regarding architectural services for the facility study. Good morning, Linda. Nice to see you this morning, and you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you. We are requesting your support for an update to our architectural study. This will update the facility study that we had in 2017. It will give us an analysis for all of our TBAISD board, all of our buildings, and it will support the strategic plan and our new fund balance policy 6220.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'd make the motion to approve the proposal from GMB Architects.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a support?
I'll support.
Thank you, Jim. We have a motion and a support. Is there discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question. Yeah, I've got a question. So I'm reading here that said that the original facility study that they did was 27,000. Did I read that right?
That is correct.
And so they're redoing and updating a study that they already did, largely covering this the same subset of facilities. Is this the scope of this project different or expanded in some large way? Because I mean, it says the increase in cost from $27,000 by $1,500 seems reasonable, but how much of this is a redo of what they've already done regarding the same facilities?
We do have, as part of our strategic plan, phase 2, we do have a facilities goal this year. So we anticipate that the scope of this will be much like what we had in the first phase, meaning that they will be meeting with the stakeholders in the group that we have for that second phase. So it will be more extensive than just updating the current cost. It will actually be assessing additional needs that will come out within that group that we put together.
I mean, there's a large overlap, and not just in terms of I guess I want to just ask, I mean, there's a large overlap in terms of time spent. They have to redo that same time meeting with similar people or similar groups of people. So that there is some logic in that it costing a similar amount, but were there any elements of this that allowed for a reduction in that fee relative to the fact that they are repeating the same thing again? I guess I'm pushing back a little bit on the fact that a little bit more than before. I would say there are some functions that are definitely you have to do again, and it takes time and effort and travel and all of the things that would be necessary. But there are other elements that would be relatively template based because they've already done the work on certain elements of it. So I guess that's my only comment. I'm going to vote for it, of course, because I think we need to have this done as part of our strategic plan. But I just wondered how much pushback we gave regarding the fee.
So I can kind of chime in on just 2 points. Number one, if you're familiar with architectural fees, architects lose money on these facility study in terms of time, energy, and effort. They offer this as a service primarily because they're hopeful that in the future, if you do some construction or building projects, that you'll be satisfied with their work and then contract with them as your architects. So in general, I'll say this is definitely not something that architects make money on. Let's say the amount of hours necessary to go through with meeting with stakeholders and evaluating each of the systems, the HVAC systems and all of that. Even though they've done that once back in 2017, they're still going to need to perform those functions because lots of things change. You know, weather conditions change. They want to make sure that maintenance is up to speed, all of those types of things. So I would say we did have conversations around the price. And as Linda and I talked about it, felt like this was a very fair and reasonable increase given the amount of time that they'll be spending.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, go ahead, Dr. Sigleric.
Brown,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Item C, recommendation school liaison contract with the Traverse City Police. Again, Linda, you have the floor.
We are seeking your support for the renewal of the school liaison resource officer that we have with the city of Traverse City. This is a renewal for a 2-year contract. This will be the 7th year and our 5th year with Jenny Lynn Oster.
Need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
There's a motion and support. Discussion. There being no discussion, Dr. Sigleric, could you call the roll, please?
Brown,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item D, recommendation St. John's contract. Good morning, Carol. Nice to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you all. This item should be removed from the agenda for approval. The student for whom the nurse was required is doing quite well, And we actually just heard over the weekend from the district that this contract will not be necessary.
Well, that's wonderful news. Thank you. And then
Great.
we'll move on to item E, and you still have the floor with respect to the Munson Home Health Care contract.
Yes, so this is a request for a renewal of an annual contract with Munson Home Health to provide nursing supervision during transportation. And the Public Health Code and the administrative rules for nursing require that a registered nurse be available at all times for evaluation of students when others have been delegated to carry out nursing functions. And that's required in our nurses' work. The typical school day, and we begin transportation at 5:15 or 5:30 and continue until 5 or 6 o'clock. So this contract covers the time before and after school and during the day when the nurse is responsible for training and supervision of the people who carry out the healthcare plans during transportation.
Thank you. I need a motion.
I'd make the motion to approve this contract.
I'll support.
There's a motion and support. Thank you. Discussion.
I just wanted to be clear that if we do go remote or however this goes, Carol, that this then would not be utilizing it, comes back out, right?
Correct.
Okay.
There would be no need for transportation services and the nurse would be reassigned.
Perfect. Okay.
Good question, Liz. Anyone else? All right, we'll go ahead. Dr. Seglarek, call the roll, please.
Brown,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Item F, recommendation Title IX policy. Dr. Seglarek.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the board's willingness to consider recommendation to update our Title IX policy. I'd like to just make a couple comments. One, it is outside of our sequence with respect to having it for public comment for 30 days in that the timeline and turnaround was so abbreviated. Just a couple comments. The new regulations, the Title IX regulations, are over 2,000 pages. They addressed over 120,000 comments that were posted online. Once they were adopted, the Department of Education essentially gave us 90 days to develop a policy and put it in place. The regulations are in effect August 14th, whether or not we successfly adopt a policy or not. I will just make some general comments that our leadership team is frustrated a bit with the timing of it. We're frustrated with the onerous regulations that are put on us with respect to Title IX investigations. However, we recognize that it is the law, and until a judge overturns the regulations, we are obligated to comply. The policy that is before you for your consideration and approval has been drafted by our attorneys at Troon. We have a training that is scheduled for August 18th, a 4-hour training where our staff will be appropriately trained to ensure the compliance of not only the regulations, but of this policy. And so we have this in front of you for your consideration. Again, while it is not perfect, it does give our staff some marching orders on how we will address the new regulations. So I'm seeking your approval on the Title IX policy update.
Thank you, Dr. Seglarek. We need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Support?
Support.
We have a motion to support. Discussion.
Yeah, I have a real hard time with this policy change. And just kind of digging around, I read it last night. I wish I would have read it earlier to get some more thought into it. But I note that there's 18 states that have joined together to file a lawsuit to prevent these policies from going into effect. And Michigan is one of the states that has joined that lawsuit. I don't know where that lawsuit stands, whether there's a initial hearing scheduled and when that might be. I'd love to know how that would go. But we joined this lawsuit because the sense is that these final rules will, and I'm reading from a white paper here, will make educational institutions less safe and diminish their ability to promptly deter and stop and prevent sexual harassment and violence. That reason alone is enough for Governor Whitmer and Dana Nessel to join the lawsuit. We could go on. I don't know whether, Nick, from what you just said, it doesn't sound like we can delay to have either further study of this policy or to see whether there's any movement on the lawsuit that the 18 states have joined together to file or not. But I'm very uncomfortable with that. This reverses and makes our schools less of a safe environment for students that may be in the situation of needing to file a complaint under Title IX.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else?
Joe, can I comment on that and really appreciate Jim's comments. And quite honestly, our leadership team also had conversations around that lawsuit and whether or not we too wanted to specifically sign on in consideration of the points you make. What I will say though, and I hope the board recognizes that a policy is only as good as the individuals that administer that policy and what they focus on. And what I want our board to know is that while there are some different regulations, we also prioritize the safety of our students and staff. And so we will be treating any allegation of sexual harassment or assault with very clear diligence and care. Part of this policy identifies 4 administrators that will be trained in a variety of roles to ensure that we are addressing any allegation of sexual assault or harassment. And so, again, while we may not agree with all of those parameters, and we too struggled with many of the new regulations, the implementation is that our staff are going to prioritize our students and staff in the administering of this policy.
Thank you, Dr. Sigleric, for those remarks. Anyone else?
I have a quick question. Jim, perhaps you can answer this here, or maybe Nick. In your investigation and research, have you noticed if any other ISDs have pushed back or have voted this down?
I don't know that.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm not familiar with any of them. Again, we've in our circles, in our discussions, we struggle with some of the regulations, and until there's action on that legal front, it remains the law as of August 14th. And I do think that they tried to file an injunction to have it stay as is, and that was denied. Again, the need to move forward with the policy.
So if there were a movement in the courts to pull back or deny the implementation of this policy, then we would just come back and rewrite our policy at that time?
Correct.
Okay.
Further comment or discussion?
Well, I would assume that even with the change, we would have to do the minimum, and anything we would do that would ensure more safety for our students or employees, we're allowed to do that. Am I correct?
I would say so. I mean, we could put a more restrictive policy in place. I think some of the interpretations around how the investigation is conducted, when a district is required to do an investigation, how hearings will be conducted. Those are some of the nuances around the policy that have been outlined and will present some challenges, especially with respect to maybe not so much for our organization, but for districts that have much less capacity with training and the number of individuals they have that could conduct investigations. But you're right, Jim, we could approach it in that way.
Well, is it likely that this would be another service that our locals would lean on us to help them with?
It's a great comment, and it is possible. We've had some internal discussions ensuring that we have the appropriate number of individuals trained. And for those districts that may fall short and might need some additional assistance, it is likely that we will be able to help and assist if requested or called upon.
Further comment? Go ahead with the roll call, Dr. Segler, please.
Brown,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
Carpenter,
No.
Shear,
No.
Tank,
I'm going with Jim's research and concerns, so no.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3.
Very well, thank you. Item G, Great Start Readiness Program Contract. Dr. Segler.
So as with all of our recommendations, you have a board summary sheet and associated documentation. As outlined in that board summary sheet, we've included updated contract that we negotiated with Traverse Area Public Schools to assist and operate up to 4 GSRP classrooms. We recognize these are very challenging times and districts have difficult decisions. We feel fortunate that we're able to partner. I want to give a special thank you to Dave Mengenbier, Becky Ewing from the Community Foundation and Rotary Charities for their partnership with TCAPS and TBAISD to ensure quality start for our 4-year-olds within our region. So our recommendation is that you approve the contract to run and operate up to 4 GSRP classrooms.
We need a
I would be
motion.
happy to I'd make that motion to approve the Great Start Readiness Program contract.
Happy to support.
Is that Jim Shear?
It is.
Thank you, guys. All right, we have a motion to support. Discussion.
I just want to make mention that I am thrilled that you guys took the lead on this and found some way to work this out and kind of made this a cohesive plan with all the right people at the table. You did a really great job.
I would agree. It's exciting to hear that we're going to be serving preschoolers 4 classrooms is awesome. And hopefully we'll get some more in the future. Good job, guys.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't at this point also thank Yvonne and Emily for all their time, energy, and effort, even the business office and Linda and Sean in a very short period of time came together, and appreciate their leadership.
Absolutely. Thank you for that comment, Dr. Segler. Any further discussion? Go ahead with the roll call, please, Dr. Segler.
Brown,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes. Item
Motion
H,
carries.
recommendation, COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. Dr. Segler.
So again, I want to thank the over 75 individual staff members that have been working tirelessly over the last month, month plus, during this very difficult time. I want to thank Jody for her comments. The comments of our parents are critically important. This is not something that we present to you lightly. It is something that we recognize there's uncertainty. And with that, we were also provided the task outlined by Executive Order 142 to develop plans to provide face-to-face instruction if we remain in phase 5 and 4. And currently, we are in phase 5. And so I want to, again, thank everyone for their consideration. Board, we have presented you with that 63-page document that I know you have read. And I know that you have read and combed through it because of the many questions that you have posed. And I want to thank you for your diligence with that. Today, what I will do is not go through page by page, but provide a high-level overview and then push pause and maybe answer some of the questions that you have. I also want to recognize the leadership of Carol Greilich, Emily and Pat, Matt Olson, Linda and Brandy. They are the ones that really led these individual groups as we move forward in these different sections. So I'm going to make an attempt here to share my screen and provide just a high-level overview, and then we
can I interrupt you for 1 second? Nick, can I interrupt you for 1 second? I just want to make sure, and this would be totally out of order or out of the procedure, but I see so many boxes of people on the screen, and I just would wonder if we might want to make sure none of those people felt that they wanted to make public comment yet didn't really understand the procedure or protocol to doing so, or miss their chance, and maybe offer up an opportunity for them to make public comment. If there's nobody in that group that has a public comment that was missed, then of course, you know, move forward. But anyway, that's my suggestion to Joe.
Very well, thank you. We'll consider it later on. Continue on, Dr. Segler, if you would, please.
So can everyone see? Oh, wrong one. Let's try this again.
I was seeing it.
I was seeing it as well.
Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so again, I want to reiterate this is a high-level summary of some of the major components within the plan. The 63-page document is available for review. The board has actually had that since Friday, since it has been completed. We're really going to highlight 4 areas of the plan: safety protocols, mental and social emotional health, instruction, and operations. That's the way that the roadmap was outlined and provided to us, and that's the way that our team addressed each of these 4 areas. I felt like it'd be appropriate to remind us why we're in a situation where obviously we had to go to remote at the end or beginning in March 13th. And I think that there was a high level of recognition that the value that our teachers and our assistants and parapros and custodians and staff provide our community and our parents is something that is unmatched. I can't thank them enough. They are heroes. I believe they are. They have the recognition and support of our community. So first and foremost, safety protocols. I want to highlight that whether we are in phase 4 or phase 5, we will be requiring our students and staff to be wearing masks. It is a recommendation. They'll be following the CDC guidance for face coverings. We also recognize, as we have demonstrated in our some of our summer school programming, that there are instances, especially with some of the special populations that we serve, that students are not able to wear masks. And given that those situations, we are going to be taking additional precautions along with masks, trying to provide our staff with face coverings and or gowns where appropriate. We want to try to provide as much PPE as we can and allow for as safe a situation as we can when we reopen. Again, we might have some districts that are choosing, especially in phase 5, to make face coverings optional. And we're going to be communicating with our districts, those that are coming to, let's say, the Career Tech Center, that while it may be optional for them in their home district, it will be something that will be required in our CTC. And one just general comment on that, I think it's important that we recognize that the recommendation, obviously, from our health department, and we've been working tirelessly and collaboratively with our health officials, following their guidance and recommendation. One of their recommendations is to try to cohort as much as possible student groups, and recognizing that in our Career Tech Center, we're bringing students from multiple school sites. And so additional precautions are, we think, appropriate and relevant. Another adjustment and change around the safety protocols, that family members or guests will not be allowed into the school building unless underneath extenuating circumstances determined by school districts and officials. Again, we want to try to maintain or not introduce as many different individuals within our buildings. All guests who enter the buildings, all guests must complete the entry protocol. And if they are to enter, have to have masks and follow the hygiene and social distancing protocols as outlined in the plan. Underneath mental and social emotional health, again, thank you to Carol and the team. We want to make sure that that we are adhering to, whether we're in phase 1 or phase 6, the social and emotional health of all of our students and staff. And so we have an employee assistance program for our staff that we put links in our plan, and we'll be educating our staff upon, as well as talking to them around resiliency, self-care. I do think it's interesting and informative that the area pediatricians have, as long as we are in phase 5 and phase 4, encouraged us to consider face-to-face instruction with the appropriate protocols. And one of their tenets is the social emotional well-being of our young children. So we definitely want to make sure that we're addressing that, and it doesn't matter what phase that we're in, we want to pay close and special attention to that. Instruction, I do want to point out an update from Friday. We were able to make an adjustment that was not highlighted, and that is a clear distinction underneath instruction if we do drop to phase 4. So currently we're in phase 5, and we're recommending to the board to approve a plan that would have face-to-face instruction with, or shall we say mask-to-mask instruction for our students. However, if our region would go down to phase 4, our Career and Technical Education Center would look a little differently. As you can see, what we're recommending is that it would operate as a regional facility, bringing students from 5 counties. We would then students attending the CTC program will revert from 5 days a week to 2 days a week, and would be engaged in distance learning the other 3 days. The adjustment to hybrid will reduce crowding by 50%, increase capacity for social distancing, and still afford our state-of-the-art facility for the impactful hands-on learning component. Again, we are in a little bit different situation than a local district would be. We felt like if we drop to phase 4, which means there's a bit more community spread, we need to take additional precautions in the area of an instructional platform. And then in operations, again, there's a number of operational changes that we will be making. We mentioned about the entry protocol. All students would be required and staff would be required to take that protocol. We have plans in place outlined in the plan should the situation occur on if a student has been diagnosed and how we are going to address that within the facility in terms of cleaning and disinfecting, the number of days that we would be transferring back to remote. I do think it's important to recognize, and again, I can't emphasize enough how many conversations and meetings that we've had with our local health department, as well as an invitation for pediatricians. We'll be meeting with them this afternoon and allowing the medical professionals to guide our decision-making tree, whether it's talking about generally face-to-face and coming back to instruction, or whether it's contact tracing and trying to support and help them should a student be diagnosed or a staff member be diagnosed with COVID. There is no clear-cut understanding or approach. It's going to be dependent on the contacts that individual has had with others as we determine what portions of the school, the building, the district would be closed based on consultation with our health departments. So next steps, obviously we have a 63-page plan where it outlines everything from the cleaning protocols to the education and training for staff and students, the hygiene that we will be requiring, the training. All of that is detailed within the plan. The communication, if approved by the board, we would be then educating our leadership team, our staff, students, and parents, be sharing it with locals. It's a requirement that we posted on the website, and we would also do a high-level 1 to 2 page summary. If people don't want to go through the 63-page plan, at least they'll get a sense on what that would look like. I would also like to say that, you know, the requirement of Executive Order 142 requires that we have these plans in place, and there's a requirement that there's a component of face-to-face instruction in phases 4 and 5. And so we will then be submitting our plan as prescribed by Executive Order 142 to the state superintendent and the treasurer's office. Obviously, once that takes place, we will be in training and preparation. I really believe that we are a bit ahead of the curve, having to operate a summer school program. Our nurses and custodians, they are amazing. They all deserve medals for their expertise and guidance as we've gone through the protocols and have actually tested those through our summer school program in a really clear way. And then obviously, you know, as this goes on, we'll be monitoring CDC guidance from our health department. We'll be monitoring the MI Safe Start region. Should we fall back from phase 5 to phase 4 or phase 3, we would then, of course, adjust accordingly. And finally, before I take questions, I would like to again reiterate, we have had our teachers and support staff on each and every one of these committees that have been working on writing these policies and protocols. And, you know, there's uncertainty, and I want to recognize and honor that there are individuals, including myself, that are go into this with some level of wonder and concern as we move forward. And I want to thank them for the incredible amount of time, energy, and effort that they have put into this plan and living our values. We have students, learners first as one of our values, and our staff, without question, puts our students and our learners first. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this team. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
I think what I'd like to do, Dr. Segler, with your imprimatur, I guess, is have a motion and get this matter before the board. There are some 53 people, I'm told, watching us right now. And to Jason Tank's point about opening it up for public comment, I think it's an important enough topic that if there are those in the audience that want another opportunity to speak to us, that they have that opportunity to do so.
Joe, I would agree on making a motion, getting it supported before we have discussion.
Is that a motion then, Liz?
I will make the motion, absolutely.
Is there a support?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion to support. Dr. Segler, can we go back to the regular screen, or do you want to leave this up for a while?
Yeah, we can go back to the regular screen, and then if folks have questions that we need to direct, I can go back to sharing it. And I just would like to say, with any questions that we have with a level of detail, I'll probably be calling in our leadership team members who have been, obviously leading each individual group appropriately. And so they'll be able to provide that level of detail.
Thank you. Now, before we have any board question or comment, let's go to Renee. And is there anyone that has their hand up, Renee?
Yes, Scott Shu, please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Shu. Welcome to the board.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to have this extra opportunity to ask questions. Sorry, I'm in the LSC gym right now because I'm in summer school. I do want to put my thanks out to the administrative team and all of the individuals that also worked on those committees. They worked really, really hard. I see Emily shaking her head. I don't know if she gets any sleep at all, but know that truly it is appreciated. But I also would like the board to know, as the EA president, there is a lot of anxiety around coming back to school. And one of the primary concerns of individuals is that a lot of the safety procedures are focused on when students come into our buildings and entering our establishments, but a lot of our itinerants go out to the local school districts and service kids in the local school districts. And there are different policies, and there is some significant trepidation about whose plan supersedes whose, and how we might proceed through that. And again, I want to give Emily, I cannot give her enough accolades, because she and the whole administrative team, but she's who I worked with most directly, have been super supportive. And I know we're going to continue to work through this, but I guess I just wanted to say that as a representative of the EA, and let you know that there is some significant anxiety out there for the teachers and the teaching assistants and all of the itinerants that are coming back to support our students. And I certainly don't say that with, whim. You know, we want to be in school. We want to be working with students, but we also want to keep everybody safe. So anyway, thank you for giving me this opportunity to just say that. And I'm sorry I didn't follow the public comment protocol, but we were preparing to get kids off the bus. So thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Renee?
I'm not sure if anybody else, if they want to raise their hand or unmute themselves, please. Jody Rose.
Yeah, Jody Rose wanted to speak again. Go ahead, Jody.
Hi, thank you, everybody. I just want to say thank you for letting me comment. This is my very first time at a board meeting. We have done a lot of work, Emily, yes, and thank you, Scott, for bringing that up. We had a great team on this operations planning. I just wanted to point out one thing when Dr. Sigleric was talking about the summer school, and we as teachers, parapros, teacher assistants, we are mentors, we are role models, and we are here for these kids. I want to go back to school. I think a lot of people want to really go back to school. With that said, the summer school, keep in mind that it's going well. I have heard that for the most part, it's going well. Going through a lot of supplies, of course, a lot of gloves, that kind of thing, which is going to be a given. But keep in mind that when we go back, this isn't just summer school. This isn't just 3 days a week. This isn't just 4 kids in a classroom. Some of this may be that way. And I know that being a parapro, and I'm also the treasurer for our local ESP, that I hear a lot of this, and I'm hearing more and more from a teacher assistant perspective, which is very, very eye-opening. I don't know how you guys do it. I really don't. This is, you are phenomenal. You people out there that are teacher assistants are amazing, and you keep this together. This is it's a little scary coming back, of course, but when we all come back, we are going to have 10-fold students. It's not going to be just a few in a classroom. We in our classroom, we have 30, I believe 30 scheduled to come back. Now that they're not all going to come back right away, I'm sure, but I just wanted to bring that out, that all of a sudden we're going to have a lot of kids in that school, a lot of people all together. Thank you very much. I really just wanted to say that we are all in this, trying to make this work together, of course. Thank you.
Thank you again for your participation. Appreciate it. Renee, anyone else have their hand up?
Yes, Teresa Scollin.
Very well. Ms. Scullin, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I teach at the Career Tech Center. I teach a program called Front Street Writers. This will be my 5th year at this school. I want to begin by thanking everybody. I know that a lot of people have been doing a lot of work on this plan, but I have some pretty big concerns about this. Mostly, I think, in terms of transparency and completeness. So I learned in this meeting that you had a document as of last Friday that was 63 pages long. I specifically asked in the staff meeting yesterday if there was a document available and was told there was no document, and that wasn't clear when there would be one. So my concern is that teachers are being asked to commit to whether or not we're going to be in the classroom without any knowledge of what the plan entails. I'm also concerned not having the benefit of looking at the document. Perhaps this detail is covered. What I've heard about is if a kid gets sick, that there is a holding area in the school to have that child wait until they can be picked up. What I haven't heard is a discussion of the kind of ripple effect. If a child in my classroom gets sick, what does that mean for the other kids in the classroom? What does that mean for me? Are we all on quarantine? Are we not on quarantine? And once Let's assume we're all on quarantine for 2 weeks. When we come back and a second child is sick, then what happens? So I haven't heard information that indicates to me that we've thought all the way down the line about what will happen in the classroom in a really serious pandemic that is not under control right now. I'm not seeing, if there is an HR outreach, I'm afraid it's not getting to me. I have seen a letter that came through Renee Childers from Emily Quinn, letting us know about the Families First Community, yes, FFCRA Act. That letter did not include, however, information about employee rights under the Americans for Disabilities Act. And I'm concerned that the school has not, there's no form on the website. There's no information about if you have an existing health condition that makes you especially vulnerable to the coronavirus, that the school is not taking care of that and making that information available. How do you file for an accommodation? I was the EEOC officer for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and part of my job was to handle those accommodation requests. So I know what that process should look like, and I don't see any evidence of that right now in the plan so far. My personal preference would be for continuity of instruction, that we begin the year virtually and we plan on staying virtual for at least the first semester while we see what happens. We know people are going to get sick. And the back and forth between online and in class and online and in class is extremely disruptive. It's hard enough to keep students engaged, teenagers especially. And I think for continuity of instruction and quality of instruction, we should just start online and stay there. Thank you very much for all the work and attention you're giving to this. And thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you for your participation this morning, Ms. Scullin. And I think we'll continue on with public comment and then maybe make note of some of your issues that might be addressed by the team. Anyone else, Renee?
Joe, I don't see anybody raising their hand. If there are, several on the call would like to do that. Here's the time.
All right, let's we'll cut off public comment at this point. Perhaps before we go with the board comments and questions, Dr. Seglark, do you want to address some of the issues raised by public comment from Ms. Scullin?
Yeah, thanks, President Fisher, and thank you to Scott and Jody and Teresa for your participation, your comments. And I'd like to just say that we are working the very best we can as this is new information for all of us, and that timeline is very short. Know, Teresa, that we do have all of those contingencies built into the plan as best that we can. Like, for example, when you talked about in the plan, we have a quarantine room if a student is sick, and that we're working with the health department on training of the staff member that will be overseeing and making sure they have an N95 mask as well as that student. And you're right, if a student does come to the school and they have been they're been diagnosed, that's going to require us to quarantine for a period of time, and we have that built into the plan on what that looks like. I'll allow Emily to maybe address some of the other concerns around leave and what that might look like, but also know that there are new executive orders that are coming. There are changes that are happening, that this plan is a bit dynamic, that we'll have to adjust a bit as new information comes. I mean, just last week, the CDC released updated a different guidelines around symptoms and what that might look like. So we have to recognize that we're going to have to adjust as we go through this. But Emily, do you want to just touch briefly on the other comments?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Teresa, for bringing that to my attention. So in regards to the staff outreach, yes, we did try to send out a communication asking people to contact us with any questions specific to FFCRA. And I apologize that we didn't expand that to say, or any other concerns regarding, other disability acts. There is a mention of the American Disabilities Act within the full plan. And my guess or wonder, not being part of your conversation yesterday, is probably just around this needed to go through our board first before we could release the full 4-page document. So that withholding of that document, I'm certain, was truly just because we have a process we had to follow, but there is a great deal of information in there that may be more specific. And like Nick said, the process of a student or a staff member who may become ill when they are at one of our programs is very specific. It is in our response to illness protocol, which is outlined, and it's mentioned several times within this document. And just so you are aware, and everybody else is aware, like Nick said, we talk to the health department. We meet with them at least once or twice a week. Having operated and started these summer programs, I cannot speak highly enough of their response rate. They get back to us immediately with our questions, and we have a significant amount of questions. Hopefully you'll see more specifics when and if, however we move forward with this plan, once you're able to see that, some more information about that. But we will do a better job of communicating leave benefits or options, Teresa. We've tried to do that in the newsletter and through, specific emails, but thank you for that. We will certainly pay closer attention.
I'll just follow up with, we are, if the board approves the plan, be obviously communicating that plan, but also sharing a survey to really ascertain where our staff are at once they understand what the protocols are being in place, and then we will adjust accordingly on an individual basis, make sure that we're trying to meet the needs of each of our staff members.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Emily. And thank you, Dr. Sigleric. Appreciate those clarifications. And okay, board members.
I just want to ask a quick question, kind of addressing Teresa's concern. When that first letter went out from Emily, Teresa, was it not clear to you kind of what the process would have been for you to communicate your concerns back? Do we need to, is there some transparency there that you didn't feel like you knew with your background and knowledge where to go with that? Oh,
Liz,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're done with public comment, and I'd appreciate it if we just ask the questions of the team. And yeah,
you're right, Joe. I apologize. Yep. I guess I want to just make sure that there's clear communication from teachers to who they would need to, that it's very obvious that there's not any way, that there's a way that they know how to contact who they need to. Just want that transparency really clear.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. I think it's on Teresa's and also Scott. So I have two questions. So am I right did I hear this right, that our plan, well, we had 75 staff members and leaders help us with 5 different committees putting together this plan. So given that, clearly there was some, I would assume, community conversation happening within our employee base prior to the creation of the 63-page plan. I assume that there was some informal cross-sharing of what was going to become that 63-page document. But we didn't release that to the public at all over the last 4 or 5 days. I mean, this is the first time that well, I mean, maybe even many of these employees have never seen it. And so we're asking for public comment. They're coming to the meeting and we're about to discuss and vote on a plan that our employees as a large group have not yet seen. Am I hearing that right?
So the way that the committee structure worked, there was representation from all of the associations as well as our individual staffs. So correct. The process is representation, providing a document, to the board as our recommendations on how we should move forward. And then once we're able to get board approval, we don't want to get ahead of our skis. Once we have board approval, we'll communicate that. And as I indicated, there's going to have to be some adjustments based on new information and new data. And so we're going to be communicating that as the next steps if approved by the board.
Okay. And then regarding Scott's comments, it is actually, I have prepared remarks, obviously, for when we go into discussion on the actual vote. And I referenced this as well, but he brought it up. We have itinerant staff going out to local districts and performing services. And his question of which policies supersede which, how have we reconciled our safety protocols within our plan relative to the safety protocols within each and every local district that our employees visit and serve? How have we reconciled those, and what ultimately is our policy regarding irreconcilable differences in those policies?
So, my response to that would be, everyone is in the middle of trying to have board approval on what policies are. So we do not know what the formal approved policies are for all 16 of the local districts we serve. I would concur with you and with Scott. There will be, as a matter of function, some differences. Whether we're talking about PPE, whether we're talking about social distancing, whatever that may be. And so it would be premature for me to say with certainty how that's going to be resolved. But what I can assure you is when there are differences, we will be working with our staff, those itinerants that are going into those different districts, and we are going to err on the side of caution, which means we're going to have consultation with our staff. What are they comfortable with? What aren't they comfortable with certain policies? And we will then advocate and support for any situation that puts us in a spot where we can serve our community and our students as we're bound to do in a way that our staff feels comfortable doing. So for example, I'll just give an example. Let's suppose there's a district that does not mandate masks, right? And we have a speech therapist that is going into that district to provide speech therapy. I would suspect that we would be, if we're mandating a mask, that staff member will be using a mask. And if they're not comfortable providing speech therapy to a student that isn't wearing a mask, we would have a conversation with that district to say, can you have that student wear a mask during that time? And if the answer is no, then we need to try to develop a plan to either provide those services differently or work with a different staff member that might be able to adjust and to the point where they'd be comfortable. Again, I'm not committing that that's exactly what's going to happen, but I'm going to just give you some thought process as how we would approach those differences. I would like to believe that none of them will be irreconcilable.
Okay, yeah, I like that's good. The principle-based decision making regarding that and of safety first is fantastic. I mean, I think that's, and I trust that and believe that wholeheartedly, whether it was written down or not written down.
Other board members?
Yeah, I have a quick question regarding, it's on page 34. It said that you would gather feedback from families, teachers, via surveys or focus groups. I know you have a team of 75, but I'm wondering, did you actually survey families and where that data might be and how much that data might have played into how you're planning, how you planned your preparedness plan?
Yep. So we are prepared to survey once the plan is approved or considered. We will then survey our families as to, now that they know what the protocols will be, what their opinion is on whether or not they want to engage in face-to-face or not, right? It's kind of the chicken or the egg. What we considered is if we send out a plan that isn't approved and get feedback from staff and parents, and then the plan changes, now that data isn't valid, right? So now that we have a plan that says we're going to require masks for all students, here's what our safety protocols are. Now that we communicate that, the parents, I think, will have an opportunity to say, okay, I can see what they're going to do, and yes, I'm comfortable sending my child there. A staff member can say, okay, I see what all those protocols are going to be in place, and that makes sense, and I can communicate to HR that I'm in for in-person learning, that sort of thing. So again, that's just kind of the way the survey piece and the focus group piece is kind of how we are approaching it. And I don't know if any other team member wants to speak to that or not.
I would just add that we did survey parents prior in June and early July, and over 50% supported in-person instruction then. So we have done surveys prior to summer programming. We are just starting for fall.
Carol, yeah, I would be curious to know how staff feels, to be honest with you. I know our local district was able to send out just like 4 simple questions that said, are you afraid to return to school? And a yes or no. And then a couple of other questions. If we did return to school, what would you require? What kind of things would you want in your classroom? We have our board meeting later this week. So I think that data was really helpful to inform how people are feeling, kind of getting that temperature. But thank you for all the work you have done. I do appreciate it. And I appreciate the plans afterwards as well.
Nick, I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, let me jump in just for a second. I have several questions, Nick. First of all, with respect to the expense involved in PPE, custodial help, all these things, do we have supplies? What are we all set there?
So again, I want to give a shout out to our nurses. Just have been phenomenal in coaching and guiding us and what we would need and looking for different types of supplies, different avenues. Our custodians from a cleaning perspective. I mean, our employees are top notch. I'm so proud of the work that they've done. But in terms of specifics and dollar amounts, I'm going to defer to Linda and maybe she can comment on where we stand with supplies.
Thank you, Nick. So currently our nursing staff is working with all of our department supervisors to analyze what their PPE needs are, and we are working on getting those secured. We do have a significant amount of the mask, the gloves, and certainly the face shields already in play, as well as cleaning supplies. We do recognize that we will need some additional supports with custodians, and so we are looking at adding a midday shift custodian to address those needs, particularly in relation to Career Tech Center, to be able to flip that building in a very short amount of time. So at this point, we feel good where we are. There are some, in terms of budgets, we feel that we are okay. There are some FEMA grants that are available, so we'll be looking at those to see if that will help offset some of the budget needs that we do have.
What was that, Linda? That last thing you said? What a grams?
FEMA.
Oh, FEMA. Okay. Thanks.
Second is our September board meeting on the 1st, Renee?
It's the 8th.
It's September 1st, first Tuesday.
All right. So I want to address the transparency issue because many of you probably know transparency to me is extremely important to Ms. Scullin's comment. And sadly, we're in a situation where deadlines, planning, all that sort of thing didn't permit us to be perhaps as transparent as we would like to be. That just comes with the territory, I'm afraid. I don't mean to be flippant about it. It's very serious, but we do have some time from now until the September board meeting for staff members to become familiar with the 63-page document and register with the board or with the administration at least, any thoughts and comments that they might have. I would assume, as following up on some of the comments made by Dr. Sigleric and Emily, that the plan is, for lack of a better term, fluid, and that as staff members become familiar with the substance of it, that some of the things may work, some may not work as well as we thought, and we may have to go to Plan B. This is brand new territory, and I can't say enough about the 75 people in the various committees, the time and energy that was spent putting this plan together. We all have been bombarded with information about the COVID, about whether to open, whether not to open, whether to have mass gatherings without masks or not. I mean, the information is all over the map. So to some extent, like it or not, we have to trust the process of 75 pretty darn smart people getting together and taking into account just about every facet or aspect of this disease and the effect it has on children, teachers. It's the challenge to those people was just absolutely, in my mind, overwhelming. So we all need to be patient a little bit. So with those remarks, I'll go back to the rest of the board. Thank you. Jason, I know you were interested in saying something.
I have a question that's, I know it's for Nick, and I think he'll probably be the one that addresses it. And I understand that's an almost impossible question for you to answer. So I'm only asking it for the benefit of the employees who are watching. And it also references Carrie Noga's question regarding her son in a program of ours that takes place in a TCAPS building. So in light of last night's vote by the board of TCAPS to start the school year for at least 9 days remotely, at which point they will revisit that decision before starting in person. Talk to me a bit about what the process will be, or the timeline of communication for parents as well as employees who are serving students within the TCAPS population. I know you can't answer that instantly about what you're going to do or how you're going to communicate, but I want to just kind of throw it out there for them to know that it's coming or what that process will be.
So thanks for that, Jason. And you know, that decision was about 12 hours ago, right? Where it was finalized. And so, you know, I appreciate your grace and not having a very specific answer to that. What I can say is that we do have several programs that are in TCAPS buildings. And so we're going to have to work with TCAPS as to what that looks like at the beginning of the year. My hope is that there are run programs, and it's our hope that we'll be able to work out logistics to be able to make that happen. I do know that TCAPS's position on our Career Tech Center students is that they signed up for that program, and their expectation is that they would follow our protocols and our schedule. And so, you know, that's going to be up to the individual parents to follow through on what they're comfortable with, but we would welcome them at the beginning of the school year as our schedule has it as of today. So again, no answers, but what I will say is once we're able to work out terms as to whether or not we'd be able to open those as typical or have to do some adjustments, we would be communicating with our parents post haste.
Thank you.
Other board members.
So I have a couple questions. To the board's benefit, this is the second COVID-19 plan that's been presented to me in the last 24 hours. So I feel very versed in COVID-19 plans at this moment. So I just have a couple questions. Nick, the first one is N95 masks. Do you know if the health department has plans to fit the staff for the N95 masks appropriately? Meaning there is an actual protocol for fitting an N95 mask. So the person has the correct size on their face?
So great question. One that I would defer to the health department. And again, I have a meeting at 3 o'clock with them. That's a question I'm going to ask. And if they don't have the personnel directing us to a physician or someone that has been trained that would be able to guide us. What I also will say is that we do have a team of nurses that also could support in the proper fitting. I'm assuming here that they've been trained on that particular issue, and that they would be able to lend assistance to our staff who aren't familiar with that. But really great question.
Perfect. My second question is with the career tech portion of the presentation. Can you explain, I believe you said 2 days will be on for students in person. What would the other 3 days look like for a career tech student?
So great question, and I'm going to defer to Pat on this, but just for clarity, if we're in phase 5, it's as normal.
As
quote
is.
unquote.
Yes.
This is if we drop to phase 4, doing a hybrid. And Pat, do you want to touch on that?
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for the question. Yeah, what we've looked at trying to do if we drop down to a phase 4 was trying to ensure that our class cohorts would drop and decrease in size. So we would be looking at basically serving half the students that we normally would on each day. So roughly about 250 kids in the AM session and another 250 in the PM session. We would look at Wednesday as a day with no students in the building to do a far better maintenance and clean. And then on the days that we didn't have students in class, we would incorporate our ELA, our math, our safety protocols within each program, career opportunities, guest speakers, possibility of remote field trips, which we had success with some of our programs when we shut down in March. We will need to do some work, quite honestly, with our technical teachers, our ELA teachers and math teachers to figure out what exact time we would talk about on Wednesdays and those off days that those students wouldn't be there. But we would envision having a Monday, Thursday and a Tuesday, Friday with students in person.
Pat, what about students who've been part of a co-op program in the past? Will that continue?
Yeah, so there's some questions there, Jim. So at the end of the school year last year, the state was real clear that the co-op, the state of Office of Career and Tech Ed was clear that either work experience or co-op was an extension of school. And when school closed, students were no longer allowed to participate in those opportunities. So I think it would depend on what phase we were in. If we fell to a phase 1, 2, or 3, Jim, I think the answer is no, because that's what it was in March. The state made it real clear that students from our facility could not participate in work experience or co-op. If we maintained a level of 4 or 5, I believe that those opportunities would still exist. And because of this, the state has looked at opening up more opportunities for programs such as graphic arts or web design where they could potentially work remotely, which in the past before COVID was discouraged. They wanted those students out in business and employment. But due to COVID, I think there has been some leniency given there with some of our programs in order for that to take place and happen.
If you could also just speak briefly around the nuance with career and technical education and not being allowed to certify our programs if it's a fully remote option.
Yeah, certainly. So when working with the Office of Career and Technical Education and the state director, Brian Piles, there's some significant guidelines out there as to how certain programs within our building would be delivered completely remotely. And in order to do that, the state has said that they would not allow for it to be offered as a state certified CTE program, meaning that if you're in auto tech or you're in electrical occupations or you're in welding, there's just certain things that you can't do with a textbook or through remote instruction, and you need to be in the building and get that hands-on instruction. And so because of that, that is why we are looking at that blended program, because we believe we can get that time in. It'd be minimum time, and certainly the program would look different compared to 5 days a week, but we believe we can get that hands-on time in those programs, which the state would require in order to have completer status for those students coming through our career tech ed programs.
Other board members with comments or questions?
I do have one more question. In the plan, I did click on Emily when Emily suggested maybe there were links for the illness Teresa brought up earlier, how to report it, the illnesses, the information on it. So I did look up that protocol. Within that protocol, it says to confer with your health department on next steps if there is a student or staff person, like what to do. They may recommend shutting down for a few days. It says in there, but it says contact your COVID point person. Did I miss it somewhere that there is a point person in here somewhere who that might be? And if you have it, maybe that needs to go in the document so that we're clear and that we know.
Great suggestion, Rachel. Each building has to identify 2 individuals that would be responsible for assisting our health department officials on contact tracing and providing information. And so again, great suggestion. When we've identified those 2 individuals per building, it is something we'll be able to embed in that plan. I don't know, Emily, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So on page 8 of the large plan, there's a document that's called the COVID-19 building plan. And so in that, we are going to ask each of our buildings to identify a main contact. In there also are going to be our contact tracers. So those people are going to work directly with the health department. They've asked us to identify 2 people. So we'll have those folks identified. We'll also have our mental health liaison identified within that document, as well as custodial staff, et cetera. So each building is going to be asked to have these people identified so that we at any time know who we need to contact when.
That's great. Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Board members, further comment? All right, let's go ahead, Dr. Seglerich, with a roll call vote.
Joe, I don't know if we have had a motion yet on this, have we? I thought we were just in the conversation period before the motion.
No, we have a motion and a support. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Renee.
It's McKellar
Yep.
and then Carpenter.
Well, then I have more comments, and as well as a prepared comment I'd like to give.
All right, go ahead.
So, I before I give you my prepared comment regarding my vote, because I believe this is a complex issue that requires a more nuanced comment than a yes or no vote. I have some broad views on what we're facing, and I guess what I'll start off with is, in our region, there are obvious testing inadequacies regarding this. And I think that may be an understatement. I've had conversations with the health department myself regarding their toolkit. And without going into detail, I would say that those conversations have left, well, first off, the toolkit itself has left a lot to be desired. And the conversations and follow-up conversations on it are also not very confidence-inducing to me at all. Now, I say that with limited, as little critique as possible of the people involved in that. I think that what we're dealing with here, from high down to the lowest level of decision making, is a series of unfortunate inadequacies that have happened. And I think that that's compounded as you go from level to level to level. And I think that toolkit is an indication of that same trend. I'll also say that I've really tuned into this issue a lot. I'm sure I know that all of you have. I know that the public has. I know that employees have. There's been, a million articles being written by people with various opinions. It's a hell of a lot to weed through, or to wade through. I would say that a general comment that I think is important to say, at least. So first off, I'm not trying to lecture. I have that tendency in life, and so I apologize ahead of time. I think this is a time, however, to make a statement. And we are elected board members, and I think this is our role at this time to make these kinds of statements. I want to say that I am not of the belief that teachers are the equivalent of nurses and doctors in the sense that they are first line responders in a global pandemic. I think that this is a one ask too far for many of our teachers. And I'm going to put parentheses around that because teachers and staff, I should say, which is important to include everybody involved in the education system. The parentheses around that are that, we are a unique organization with unique services, which I will address in my prepared comment. But as a general statement, I think that the commentary and tone of many of the opinions that I hear, there is a false narrative or underlying assumption that teachers are duty bound to step in front of this for society. And I'm going to reference a couple of things that people tend to say in their opinion to return in person in the midst of the uncertainty that we have. And that kind of comes back to the lack of clarity, lack of a dashboard of what's going on when you have an inadequacy in testing. So what I will say is that one reference is that, it's important to go back to school for the social and emotional health of our students. And in addition to that, the question that is consistently posed is, we have to move forward from an economic standpoint, and daycare is a large element of that. I believe that systematically over the years, there's been an underfunding of schools, and these supports and these expectations of the school system, these have been cut all along the way in many of our local districts. And now the ask is for us to provide them, because the absence of them will create massive societal pressures. I think that there's an inconsistency there of cutting funding over the course of time, having those services cut, and relying now on those services to sort of reappear magically, and thereby asking for in-person return to in-person school, I think is an ask too far. And I think we should all pause as a society, frankly, and ask ourselves how we justify that now. The last broad comment I will say is, here we are, in a remote meeting as mandated by our governor. Every one of the districts that have had to vote on this are meeting remotely in the month of August. And many, many, many districts are voting to go back in person, where we will gather many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of students, and doing our best to keep it safe. While people are not allowed to gather in groups larger than 10, I suppose, if the communication's been clear to me. And we can't go to movies, for example. There are many things that we're not doing, yet schools at the very front end of that health department toolkit, I don't know if any of you've read it, but simply the governor's attorney, the legal counsel, has said that schools and classrooms are not public spaces. That is a distinction that I think needs to be highlighted, because it defies all logic. And I think schools and teachers and the staff members who support them are being asked to be, they're being separated from the rest of society, who are not frontline workers, who are not medical professionals, who did not sign up for this duty in the middle of a pandemic. So those are my broad views, and I think I just needed to say it. I needed to get that off my chest. Now I want to give you guys my prepared remarks, because I think this part requires some particular language, and I just want to make sure that I get it just right. So before offering my explanation of my vote, I want to first recognize the many hours of work performed by our staff and executive team in the development of our plan. That has to be said. I know that it literally is hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, and it's incredible that people in the summer jumped in and did this work as mandated by the state. And I view this preparedness plan very much as first and foremost a compliance document. I think we've kind of referenced that multiple times in this discussion, but it also comes with recommendations of how to open school. So as presented, I must vote against the preparedness and response plan. I've weighed my vote carefully. On one hand, it's our organization's purpose and desire to serve students, educators in our region's local schools. That is our purpose, and here we are preparing to fulfill that purpose. On the other hand, it's also our organization's duty to do what's best for the health and well-being of our entire community. So this is a situation that needs to be weighed, and I'm sure that everybody has weighed it differently in their minds, but those two things are certainly weighed. Given the varied nature of our programs and services, I believe an up or down vote on the plan is insufficient without a program by program review of my thoughts. So I'm sitting here as a board member having to vote yes or no, but we have multiple programs that need to be discussed by, at least I need to explain my thoughts on this. So the Career Tech Center, my view is the Career Tech Center should open the school year fully remote. In the end, I feel the risk of causing a broader community spread of the virus is too great by offering a regional program that requires the busing of 1,000+ students each day from 5 counties and 16 local school districts. That is, by definition, a risky situation. We are not, from everything that I understand, we are not providing that busing, of course. They are bussed in, we reimburse those costs, but we are developing and offering a regional program that essentially asks for our local schools to bring those students together every single day and then bring them back, have them go back to their local communities. So in a sense, we are creating the opposite of what would be described as cohorting or separating. We are actually consolidating and then redistributing back out to the local communities. So I believe a fully remote start is what we should do at the Career Tech Center. I do want to say that I commend the plan in holding out that phase 4 we would do hybrid. I don't think that that's an easy decision in light of the local schools around us who have uniformly at this point, other than TCAPS with a 9-day delay, at a minimum 9-day delay, to go back fully in person. So it's difficult to reconcile that, but in the end, the Career Tech Center is our program and we have control over how we proceed. So fully remote. Center-based special education. My view is the center-based special education program should open the school year fully in person. Adhering to the strictest safety protocols described in our plan. I know that there are some elements in our safety protocols where we separate out phase 4 and phase 5 protocols. When I say strictest adherence, I mean erring towards phase 4 in all cases. In the final analysis, I feel this programming is critical for these students and their families and cannot be closely replicated outside of a face-to-face environment. That's what makes this vote difficult, because certain programs have certain critical function that requires face-to-face, in my view. New campus. My view is that new campus should open the school year fully in person as well, adhering to the strictest safety protocols described in our plan again. The level of student need in this program helps to justify operating in a face-to-face setting at this time. However, given the possible absence of proper physical distancing and other safety protocol compliance, the high risk of jointly busing our center-based special education students and our new campus students should be acknowledged, and additional risk mitigation steps should be explored if they haven't been. This commingling onto the Dean buses, I don't know the density of the student populations on the buses. I do know that the duration of those bus rides are long. Getting back to the health department toolkit, one of the major critiques that I have with that toolkit, and I have many, but one of the and we rely on the health department. So I'm using this as a critique of a foundational element of what schools are looking to in terms of this toolkit. Pages 1 through 10 consistently describe the concept of a close contact as somebody that you were within 6 feet of for longer than 15 minutes. Yet the page 11 describes how we contract COVID and the certain situations that would be higher risk. They describe the concept of a classroom setting where you spend 6, 7, 8 hours a day with people supersedes the concept of mask wearing. It supersedes the concept of 6 feet, and it certainly exceeds the duration of 15 minutes, meaning that anybody in that room may be considered a close contact. The same can be said for frequency. Frequency says that even if you're with somebody for less than 15 minutes, but if you do that day after day after day after day during an infectious period, for example, on a bus, that also would constitute a close contact, regardless of the fact that you were farther than 6 feet distance. So I have a difficulty with the concept of commingling our special education population with our center-based programs for special ed and our new campus students. I don't know what the risk mitigation techniques would be there, nor the alternatives to it, but I'm highlighting it as a concern for me. Student-facing services is the next category. So I wanted to make sure I used this phrase properly, so I kind of cross-checked it to make sure that it made some sense within the lingo of the ISD. But student-facing services, my view is that professionals who typically deliver in-person instruction to students in our region should mirror the mode of instructions of the local districts they serve. So I'm specifically talking about our itinerant staff. Our employees, even working in a local setting, should always work under our adopted safety protocols at a minimum, which I heard Nick through the follow-up question with Scott, that is our intention, to follow the strictest protocols. And that would mean that if a local district has even greater safety protocols, we would adopt theirs. I would, of course, encourage anybody who has stricter protocols than us to adopt theirs across the board for our whole organization, frankly. If the local protocols can't meet or don't establish don't meet the established thresholds, then a transition to fully remote instruction should be considered for these student-facing services. In other words, first and foremost, our employees need to be kept as safe as humanly possible. If that can't be complied with at a local district, then we have to think of alternatives for the safety of our employees. Non-student facing services, my view is that our professionals and staff who typically deliver non-student facing support to our local districts or support our internal operations should open the school year fully remote. That just seems completely logical in the midst of a pandemic, to make sure that we utilize all the technology we've got at our disposal for non-student facing services. So to further help mitigate the inherent health risks to our employees and our students, I'd also call for routine and timely testing of our teachers and staff, especially those who work in person with students. If our community and our health department is incapable of doing this, I think it's our duty as an organization that employs hundreds and helps to support thousands and thousands of students and many thousands of employees. It's our duty as an organization to push the envelope regarding this inadequacy of testing by doing all that we can to increase our testing capacity for our population. This is the idea that we are at a point where 5 to 10 day delays in getting tests and results during a time when people are infectious. It's embarrassing. It's beyond inadequate, and it has to be improved. It's impossible to understand how we have gotten ourselves to a situation where we literally are flying blind regarding testing in our community. As we move forward into the new school year, regardless of the outcome of today's vote, I will fully support our teachers and staff and executive team in their important work on behalf of our students in our programs and in our region. In every setting and in every mode of instruction, the work done at TBAISD is critical to our region's schools and students. So this nuanced vote of no is certainly not to be taken as a vote of no confidence, because I have full confidence in the executive team and in our staff. The diligence of putting together the plan is incredible. The nuanced aspect of my view of program by program requires me at any moment in time, if I feel any element is out of place with my view, I'm required to vote no on it. As you can see, if you go through category by category, in many of these cases, I'm in concurrence with the plan's view to go back in person. But in certain cases, I'm not. And I don't get to pick and choose. I just get to vote yes or no as a board member. That is the burden that we have. And so for that reason, I have to vote no very respectfully. And I wish and hope that the start of school across our region goes smoothly. I fear that it will not. The disruption that it's going to cause, it needs to be considered and should be and should have been considered, the disruption of moving backward. So that kind of frames my viewpoint. And so that's it. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew what I was really thinking before I voted no. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Other board members care to weigh in at this point? All right, go ahead with a vote. Dr. Siglaric, please.
Brown,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Tank,
A respectful no.
and Fisher.
Yes.
Motion
All right.
carries.
Motion carries. We'll go on to Roman numeral 3 information items, Community Development Coalition. Dr. Siglaric.
Thank you, President Fisher. I do want to be able to provide the board an update on the workings of community leaders around a coalition. I'm going to attempt to share my screen again, just to give you an overview. The coalition, Community Development Coalition Northwest Michigan is the title. The purpose of this really is, it's comprised of representatives from regional organizations, and the goal is to really positively affect economic, environmental, and social outcomes within our region. I want to again give a shout out to Dave Mingenbeer of the Community Foundation, who's in part heading this work up. And you can look at the number of contributing members to the coalition. It's quite extensive, and you'll be hearing more around the efforts of the group. I provided this information for you in the board packet, along with what the proposed scorecard would look like. But I want to thank the leaders within our community to really being focused and collaborative in trying to positively improve outcomes, both from a social, societal, and environmental, economic issues. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you for that. It reminds me of a coalition in Detroit that was spawned out of the riots called New Detroit, which was a similar coalition of leaders within the community, and it's an opportunity to do some pretty darn good things. So I'm glad that we're part of that. Item B, updates.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate all the time, energy, and effort of all of our staff. It was said repeatedly, and I can't say it enough. We have an amazing team here at TBAISD, and I'm proud to be a part of that, a small part. I would like to also remind the board, and I put this as a report item as well. We are continuing to move forward with our diversity, equity, and inclusion, including our superintendents and community leaders. Different than the other coalition I just talked about, but very similar makeup in terms of the community leaders. We will be engaged in a 4-hour training on August 17th. And I want to thank the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, who will be providing the trainers, and not just having us have a one training and done, but really engage in a more sustained conversation around diversity, equity, inclusion, and making sure that we're living true to our values. So I want to thank our local superintendents that have signed up to be a part of that community, that coalition, as well as our community leaders. I will continue to report out on that initiative that is so critical and important to our area and our region. And that's all I have.
Item C, board member reports or requests.
I perhaps should have brought this up earlier, but I'm just curious, when we talk about visitors to the school, I'm assuming that a board member going through the proper clearances can visit the school just to see how all of this has been put in place if they're wearing the proper PPE.
Absolutely, Jim. You know, you're as an elected official, as a board member, I wouldn't necessarily categorize you as just a visitor to the building. So we would require all the screening protocols in order for you to allow you to observe. But absolutely, we want to minimize our visitors, but the board will definitely be available or willing to, and available to participate and observe.
All right, on to item D, dates to remember, September 2nd, opening day. Any comment about how that's going to roll out?
So only comment is we are in preparation for September 2nd. Again, at this point, I think what will take place is that individual schools will be the teachers and support staff will be in their location on where they are going to serve the upcoming school year. So whether it be in their classroom or within the administration building or the individual school, and we'll be connecting everyone remotely. Obviously, you know, in large gatherings of I think we're at the point that it has to be 250 or less. We simply can't have everyone in at the same spot, but we can have them in their individual buildings, and we'll be providing additional information to the board as we come closer to that date.
Thank you. All right, we're at item E, adjournment. There being nothing further, we are adjourned. Stay safe and pray to whoever it is that you pray to frequently. Have a good month.
Thank you, everyone.